Well, what was the average age in the audience for the unit?
Oh, yeah. Usually I'm the older person
Yeah.
around. I was the younger.
Well, okay, good, how are you?
Hey, Nick, I'm good.
There's a lot of canes and walkers. They were rocking.
But they got out there, they got out there.
It's 5:30. I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Mr. Viera?
Yeah.
Dr. Vogt? Here. Mrs. Wittes? Here. Dr. Soto will be absent this evening. Mr. Dangler?
Here.
And I hereby certify that this meeting has been published in the newspapers in accordance with the Oklahoma Public Meetings Act and posted as required by law.
Thank you. First item we have for the workshop, Police Week. Yes, ma'am.
You have to tell me how to do this. Would anyone like to come sit with me?
Sit with you.
I wrote my note, I put my notes out so I could read it.
Okay, you got the floor.
All right, God bless you all. My name is Apostle Sandra Gonzalez, and I'm the founder and president of the Long Branch Citizen Police Academy Alumni. The LBCP stand for Long Branch Citizen Police Academy. I am here with Mrs. Teresa Matazzi, Ms. Barbara White, and Apostle Gloria James from the Long Branch area and the members of the Long Branch Citizen Police Academy Alumni. The alumni started back in 2015. The purpose was to help assist the Long Branch Police Department. In 2017, we started Police Week to foster an understanding between the different communities through collaboration. We, the alumni, believe that the city would benefit by uniting the city by establishing Police Week. The members of the alumni are volunteers that has dedicated their time and effort and some family to support the Long Branch Police Department. We have hosted law enforcement and community conversation 3 to 4 times a year, senior social, mental health forum, basketball and softball events, bike rodeo and safety, community healthy lifestyle, and community garden cleanup, dog walk to raise funds for the canine dog, motorcycle run to help assist with the police department, and a blue mass to appreciate and pray for our first responders. We have partners with our local organizations that also have a heart to support our Police Week. So Police Week this year starts from September 16th to the 22nd. And the first one is Monday, September 16th, is the Law Enforcement Community Conversation, which will be held at Monmouth University. The second one is our senior social with the law enforcement on September 17th at the Senior Center. We have a community volleyball tournament on Wednesday at the North Bath Avenue. And I want to pause there for a second because in the past we worked together with the Long Branch Police Department and the city. And this year I'm finding it very difficult for us to have a volleyball game on the beach, because now they want us to do event planning and to pay a fee and all that stuff. And we're a nonprofit. We have little bit to nothing, to be able to do this. So we just want to ask you later on if the city could help us out with that, so we could be able to have a volleyball tournament on the North Bath Avenue beach. And we also have wellness care and health lifestyle with Zumba. Habitat for Humanity of Monmouth County, they called us in again to help them, to assist them with a home that they're doing on Hillside Avenue. We also have a motorcycle run that's taking place as a fundraiser to be able to help to give back to our police department. That's going to be held at Harley Davidson, Route 36, West Long Branch. We have a first responder art exhibition. This is our first thing that we are ever going to do. The kids are excited. We got artwork from the local schools, and we're having an art exhibition at the library on Saturday, September 21st. And this is where we're going to focus more on the first responders for that day, because we was told that in the last 2 years doing Police Week that they felt left out. So we wanna incorporate everyone, and we wanna make that day a special day. And our judging day will be September 11th for them to come in to judge our artwork, and I realize that September 11th is a memorial, and so we're gonna plan to have something downstairs in the library, just a little time of praying for all those, you know, so, yeah. And then we're gonna end our event, with a blue mass on Sunday, the 22nd at St. James Church, and once again, we're inviting the community to come out and to help us to bridge the gap between the law enforcement and the community, and that was one thing that I just wanted to share with you on that. We just want everybody to come out, and we want to present the City of Long Branch and Council proposal for 2019 Police Week, and to validate our proposal for a proclamation. Also, Mayor John Pallone, thank you so much for helping us to do what we do. Thank you for location, thank you for always being there. And to the City Council, we would like to continue our partnership to help us with Police Week. And going forward in 2020, we would like the city to help us to offset our budget. On the last page that you have, you see that if we were doing this by ourselves, this 4 beautiful young ladies, we couldn't afford $10,000 to be able to put Police Week together. And so with the help of the city and community leaders and donation that we receive, that is helping us to do what we need to do. And so once again, we wanna thank you for all that you have done to help us this year. But moving forward, I would love to see us to do more for our police department. Thank you. Anyone have any questions, or do we ask for questions?
Anyone have questions?
Well, I just want to say thank you, because, you know, I know you started this a few years ago, and many of you weren't here, but this is just a love from a small group of people, and it originated from the Alumni Association, and as you'll see, well, we were all here last year, so nice events.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So could you just give us a little bit more detail on the budget? And, cause what does it come to? It comes to like 8,600 for the total. So
Yeah.
what,
When we looked,
For
when we
next
sat
year.
and looked at everything overall and the plan that we wanted, because, for the last 2 years, we've been doing Police Week. And if you go around the community and you ask them, do you know about Police Week? No one knows about Police Week. So this year, we went out to, or we set out to advertise more, to get more signage up, and so people be more aware of Police Week. And so we budget, about $2,100 to $2,500 for banners to be able to hang in, you know, on the streets, like you go to different towns and they have in their festival. So that will come to about 21. And, we thank God for the township gave us 1 banner. And then we wanted to also to make sure every citizen in Long Branch receive a flyer saying, Police Week, this is what's going on. And that will eliminate them saying, oh, I never heard about Police Week. What is Police Week? Because it will be in every mailbox. And that was around 3,500, because we went to the post office, we found out all the details how to do it, and it says it's gonna cost us that much money. And, you know, with our stamps and paper and copying and everything, and then the DJ for $300 for the senior center, they're looking to us, because everybody's nonprofit, everybody needs help, and so they're looking to us for $300 for that.
so what you had said before, and I guess pertaining to this year, that different groups contributed, correct? Yeah, for this year. But for next year, you would be looking for the city to cover the 86?
No, just to help.
Okay.
Just to
help.
help.
Okay.
Just to help.
Not that entire amount,
No.
just some help.
No,
Okay.
just some help. You guys helped us out
Yeah, you
with
guys
one
were-
banner.
The banner
Okay.
was
Yeah.
great, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
And we thank you for using social media to get our, you know,
Yeah.
our flyers out. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Lindsay's doing a great job doing that. Kelly from the police
Yes.
department
Yeah.
is trying to help us to get the word out. But the big thing that I wanted was to try to get every citizen to get a flyer in the mailbox, so they can't say, oh, I never heard of Police Week.
Yeah.
You know, this is our 3rd year, and we still don't know about Police Week, you know, and then we have food and signage around the community, T-shirts, giveaway, plaques, and trophies. We give out trophies every year to the winner of the softball game or the basketball game. I even have pictures to show you that,
Yeah.
and certificate that we give out.
Yeah.
And so, and this not even included our kickoff breakfast we just had about a week ago, the Blue Mass dinner, all those is
Mhm.
being donated by St. James Reach Out.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if we had to do this is how much it would cost
Okay.
us, about
Yeah.
10,000.
Yeah.
So we thank God for the partnership that we have in this community that's helping us to accomplish our dreams and goals.
Okay.
Who did you speak to about the volleyball, tournament?
Well, I meet with, okay, this is the process of what I go through. In January, I would sit down with the chief of police and basically get a date of when we wanna have police week. So we did that. So in June, we meet with everyone that's gonna participate in it. And usually in the past, we never had to pay for using the basketball or the baseball field or anything. And so this year was hit with, well, if you wanna have volleyball on the beach, we have to pay the fee, we have to go through the paperwork. And even people that's in those office is saying they never heard of this before. Why all of a sudden you have to pay when they always just volunteered, and to do that for us? Cause it's a city thing, it's not just me
Who was your-
and alumni.
Yeah.
Who was the contact that you, who told you that you had to,
Well, I got emails and phone call from Lindsay and from Kelly saying that don't forget to do your paperwork and get your insurance and get all that, and I was like, and everything, I'm like, what are you talking about? So, that's where I'm stuck
You
at.
didn't have to do that last year with the
Last year,
baseball?
never had to do it last year.
Uh-huh.
The Long Branch Citizen, the Long Branch, that's us, the Long Branch Recreation Department partnership with us, and they take care of all that. They took care of all of our sports event.
well, are you partnering with them this year?
Yeah, we always do. I mean, this is what we do. We partnership
All
with
right,
the
so
community leaders.
let's see what we can
It
do.
shouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
mean,
asking.
I
Yeah.
didn't hear about it, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Who'd you partner with? I'm sorry.
The Long Range Recreation, Carl Jennings, I meet with everyone, and he was even surprised that he was told that we had to do this paperwork and come up with insurance and stuff to
So,
have it on
I'm
the-
sorry, who did exactly you speak with, and who were you given this information by then?
Okay, Kelly.
I mean, we can talk later,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
let's see if we can work it out.
Okay, I really appreciate it because we have teams from different places that wants to come in and play.
Sure.
And we don't have money to get insurance and, so.
Is there a fee for them to play?
No, it's a fun day. Come on out and have fun. Yeah. So that's the only thing that we did not publicize this really, because we didn't, we didn't finish with the volleyball tournament, cause Carl is waiting for me to come in from this meeting to see what we're gonna do.
If someone gets hurt, who insures them?
Well, nobody's gonna get hurt. We're gonna pray that nobody get hurt.
Can I say something?
For which event?
As
The volleyball game.
as the director of beaches, nobody came to me on this at all, I know nothing about this, okay? I don't have a problem with it at all. In the past, all they had to do was fill out a form. As far as the city of partner, there should be no fee, okay? We've done this in the past with no fee. It's the first I'm learning about the volleyball.
Yeah, and I haven't heard about.
The
it.
insurance is always covered, the insurance is always asked for due to the fact that somebody could twist an ankle or anything like that.
You have to.
And it's makes the city very
Yeah,
liable
yeah.
on that. That's what the story with the insurance is. As far as setting up the courts and everything, I would be doing all that anyway, and this is the first I'm hearing about it. So maybe
Yeah,
it's a lack of communication here between people or something
But
like
Stan,
that.
even with the insurance, it's a city-sponsored event, so aren't they covered under?
Well, that was another question.
That's-
No,
because
okay.
No.
We
Okay.
can, well, is this
Maybe
done,
I
if
mean,
it's
I'm
done in
concerned about teams
conjunction
going
with
from
the
out of
city,
town.
we
With
can
the
talk
police
to Dominic
department.
about it.
With the
Yeah.
police department, which
Okay.
is
Well,
the city.
Let's see what we can do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
But
really,
yeah,
I
think-
really appreciate it.
I think there's some miscommunications, I think a lot of us have not heard
I
about it.
definitely do.
Yeah.
If
So
you
we'll
never
work
heard
it out.
about there's
Yeah, I
been total
appreciate it. I thank you so much for
miscommunication.
that.
Thank you.
Make it
And for
Yeah.
your time.
I
Thank you.
think we're going to the wrong people.
No,
Oh, the wrong
we
people
said that.
come
We
to
don't
us.
wanna- we don't wanna put that out, but.
Like, everybody's doing their job, they wanna, make sure everybody's protected and safe and so.
Yeah.
Right, I
We'll see what
understand
we
that.
can do.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I
Okay.
get it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, thank you for the time.
Item number 2, plastic bags. Ms. Irizarry.
How are you? That's
copies of a proposed ordinance that has been on the agenda of the Environmental Commission for quite some time, regarding a single plastic bag ban. If you'd like to see a copy of it, I think probably
Yeah, that'd be
most
great.
important for you to see. Some of the things, and the reason why it's maybe even taken this long, we've had a lot of people practically begging for it, which is amazing, because usually people are protesting you when you want to incorporate something like this into your town ordinances. But what we've been seeing in this space is a lot of other municipalities already have their plastic ban ordinance in place. And based off of the wording and certain things that may have been overlooked, there are other problems that have arose from those ordinances. So we've kind of just been watching, and we really wanted to propose something that was smart. So to try to avoid a lot of the pitfalls that the earlier ordinances fell into. Two of those major pitfalls have been that the public is really driving themselves towards the thicker plastic bags. If you go into like a Stop and Shop, they're available for 10 cents. They're good for up to 125 uses. They take a lot longer to break down than what the thinner ones that we're trying to combat, do. So trying to steer away from that, and that really came into play in this proposal under our definitions as far as what exactly is a reusable bag and the plastic bag. We've had some support from ANJAC, which is the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, to kind of help us draft this. And then the final thing, the Environmental Commission had a stand at Ocean Fest this year, and of course we have our Trex program in place, we have our bin, and we happen to be placed right next to an injury attorney who handed out tons of single-use plastic stuff. So it was like, our eyes were all twitching, like, if you want to recycle any of that, here's our Trex bin. So what I really also wanted to incorporate into this, because a lot of this is modeled from Monmouth Beach, which was groundbreaking ordinance for New Jersey. But they really focus a lot on just the restaurant uses and the local retail stores. But I've added a clause into this as well to cover events, Long Branch sponsored events, any type of major events, maybe like Ocean Fest, where hopefully we don't have tons of single-use plastic strewn about our boardwalk and beaches. So having those two major things in there may seem insignificant, but it has been problems throughout in other municipalities. So to date, that's kind of where we're at with this. And this would also include styrofoam, polystyrene foam containers, straws, and single-use plastic bags and utensils as well. Now we know that obviously it needs to be reviewed. We need to maybe change some verbiage. This is obviously just a proposal. But I think once it does get accepted and passed, we should set a deadline. Not like this is instantaneous, clean out all the plastic that you have, because I have heard rumblings from other business owners that that's their fear. So I think realistically, if we give them a year from the time that it comes into play, and then during that year, we're willing to do some kind of community meeting with the business owners in our community and let them know these are alternatives. Maybe have companies come in to show them other alternatives that they could use, and really just have a question and answer session about any of the concerns moving forward. But really making that year deadline and then have it go into effect.
So having written the one in Atlantic Highlands, you have an ordinance in which you have a whole bunch of different definitions, and those definitions were in all of those other ordinances because there were exceptions, and you just took all the exceptions out. So I noticed that even the Monmouth Beach and the Red Bank ordinance and all of the ordinances that Kathy has pulled that we've taken a look at all have some various degree of exceptions in them for carrying ice, for instance. A plastic bag that carries ice. You can't carry ice in a paper bag.
Right.
Yours just kind of, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way, it's like a blunt instrument.
Mhm.
You just cannot, so, for instance, and we need to all understand what we're talking about, we're talking about banning the use of plastic forks, for instance. So any takeout place in the city that sells takeout food can't use plastic forks. So that's gonna be a problem, right?
There are now compostable, biodegradable,
No,
from wood.
I understand that,
Okay.
I understand that, but we're talking about a pretty serious, and not only that, there are no exceptions at all. So, for instance, you have a definition of what a produce bag is
Mhm.
and a product bag, except there's no exception. There are exceptions in, for instance, the Atlantic Highlands ordinance, that if you go to a food store and you're buying broccoli, you can put it in a plastic bag and keep it separated from something else so it doesn't get contaminated, cross-contaminated. And you have that definition in here, except you just took out the exceptions. So your ordinance has none of the exceptions in it.
Well, the main exception that stood out, because again, this is heavily modeled off of Monmouth Beach with a few moving parts from
Mhm.
other ordinances. The main exception that Monmouth Beach had that we kind of all talked about was for selling bait. So that is probably the main exception that's in this proposal.
For selling what?
Bait.
Bait, but Monmouth Beach doesn't have a bait store.
Right, that was their
But they
exception.
have that exception just in case one does open, and that could happen very easily.
Right.
As it could in Long Branch. In Long Branch, the TAC watermen, they sell their squid frozen in plastic, and that would be an exception. But,
But
so
it's not in
what-
your ordinance,
I understand. Again, I'm
Well,
just
the
asking a
exception
question.
for bait is in 9.4, and if you look at the definition for the single-use plastic bag in the end, it says the term single-use plastic bag carryout bag does not include reusable bags, produce bags, garment bags, or garbage bags. So maybe
So I can
there's-
take a look at it, so
I think, yeah.
I'm familiar, because I've drafted a few of these ordinances,
Mhm.
so we can start by working with yours and then kind of work with it there. My impression is that these are very different from town to town because of, Pier Villages and then Monmouth Beach. So Monmouth Beach is a very different, the number of
Much easier
takeout
to manage.
restaurants, they don't have, the beach at Monmouth Beach is 2 beach clubs, it's something fundamentally different. So I'd like to, so we'll look at it in terms of those things, because it's easy to say, well, there are differences, but we don't know what the costs are, and we wanna try to get to where we wanna get as best as we can, but there's ways
I've done a lot of
to-
sourcing on
Right.
biodegradables and that, and their prices are very, very close now, even compared to Kirkland stuff that's sold at Costco. One of the things that may be an issue with the events too, is not only did the group next to us have a lot of plastic stuff, but when we walked down to the food courts to take a look, there were only one, maybe 2 that were using paper. One was a donut shop, and I think they were putting French fries. Remember the old red and white checkered paper, everybody's seen those when they were a kid. So there are ways around that, but as you said, with the price, originally when we talked about just banning straws, I was looking at a restaurant in Toronto where they use 1.5 million straws a year, and the difference between plastic straws and paper straws is $35,000. It's a lot of money. You can have a couple extra employees. So as the prices come down, a lot of this will become a moot point because the prices will be very, very competitive.
And the other thing about the implementation date, I noticed in the Redback one, they have something that's unusual, it's called a sunrise provision, but effectively what it says is that nobody will be fined until after September of 2020.
I like the idea of having a warning first time rather than a $500 fine the first time on something like this.
Well,
Just for your information.
I understand that, but so, and I don't think Nick's here, so I'm not sure if it's his guys. Warnings means that somebody's gonna have to go out, do that, keep track of warnings, that makes it complicated. I think that the idea of giving people a long lead time to understand how it is that, that they're gonna have to comply with this, because you're talking about them changing suppliers and there's cost, and we don't really. All I'm doing, by the way, is just reporting to you what what experience in other places.
And we expect that,
Yeah.
we expect the pushback. We're surprised by all
And
this.
that's why, Michelle, I like your idea of a community meeting also, because we may in fact learn a lot from that meeting that, in terms of what we're just talking about here.
Absolutely, they can air out their grievances, their concerns, and then it would give us time to do research and come back with answers and presentations and alternative companies.
But I think it's important if we immediately work with the chamber for next year's 4th of July event, because that's like really a no-brainer.
Yeah, well, we control, right? So that's a whole completely different
But when they're
thing.
meeting with their vendors and all that, they have to be, understand that this is what we're trying to do. We don't want plastics in the sea, especially along the beachfront.
Yeah.
And having balloons and things like
Oh,
that, it's just,
Absolutely.
not necessary.
So under the intent section, and I'll pass along so you can see, I'm sorry, I brought copies last minute, but the second paragraph of that came from Paramis's ordinance, really focusing on the events. Because Ocean Fest, we already knew about Ocean Fest, but witnessing it like right there, it was like we were in complete contrast with our neighbors. It was kind of ironic.
Where is it, do you have any idea where the state is on this, on legislation?
They keep saying it's coming along. What's happening?
Who keeps saying that?
I
I'm always
think,
curious as to when people
well,
say
you
that.
know, you see.
Many people say.
Yes, many people. Just once you're involved in the environmental world, you get articles in all of your news feeds on social media, so
Sure.
that's the main
I didn't know
source.
whether or not, normally these kind of proposals emanate from the administration. I haven't heard that that's happened. I don't know that Senator Smith is usually the guy that champions these kind of things. I haven't heard that from him yet.
Supposedly it's still in the works, but what's happening at a faster rate are the individual municipalities putting theirs into play. And, our concern is that if the state comes in with something and it may be on the lighter side, of a ban, and we would like to be a little bit more progressive with that.
Right, but the issue is that we also don't, what I've heard, I'll tell you what I've heard, and I always say this to everybody, I don't have any special knowledge about this, other than the fact that my partner's the speaker, is that there's some sense that there has to be some kind of comprehensive approach to it, only because it's, because of the cost involved, that it's a competitive kind of thing. So that's what I'm hearing, and that's one of the advantages to, people have to be able, the business community has to be able to understand what it is they have to comply with.
We did want to partner with the Chamber of Commerce and maybe attend some of their meetings, but it's been my experience that the business owners that attend Chamber of Commerce breakfasts are like professionals. They're not really the retail, it's not the food stores that we're trying to get. So that's why I think once this comes out that, hey, you've got a year and now we can really do invitations, to specifically to businesses and let them feel that there will be open conversation about it.
Have you reached out to Jake Jones?
About this? Not yet.
Yeah, maybe it might be a good idea to reach out to him, because he deals with a lot of, businesses.
Who was that, Rose? I didn't-
Jake Jones.
Okay. Let me ask you a question, is this basically just for the businesses or the residents?
So this puts the onus on the businesses to not provide these things, but it's gearing the consumer to
It's
go
tough.
towards reusables.
It's tough, like if you have a birthday party, some of the kids are using the plastic forks to eat the cake. It's tough for, the regular residents, you know what I mean?
Well, this ordinance doesn't ban that, it just bans
If you're
the
selling
retail
food
establishment
at a birthday
selling it.
party, I
Right,
don't think.
you would still be able to buy like a package
I know,
in the
I mean,
store,
it's-
but if you got like, takeout pasta, you may have a potato-based fork instead of plastic.
So,
Eatable fork?
Yes, that's your dessert.
So two things. One is the process moving forward. And how do we make this a collaborative kind of approach? Because we have a group of dedicated people who put a lot of time into a sample. And I think we all agree, this is just one sample out of 100 of them.
Absolutely.
And we could probably discuss every single line in it. But Lou,
I
like.
don't think he would let us do it. You just say.
Yeah, like rather than, let me take this and I'll go in my corner and I'll read stuff and then I'll give it back to you and then you'll go in your corner and you'll do that. I'm making the assumption that we all agree on the same final product, that we want something to be done about plastics. We just don't know the details of it. So the, you know, the community meeting and then also the discussion, so we understand it from the legal perspective and all the things that you're bringing up, that it's a collaborative effort all the way through.
So, I think the simplest way to do it is,
Mhm.
I'll just, before you guys leave, I'll just give you a copy of my card, you can send me contact information. I'll take a look at this, I'll kind of tinker with it a little bit, I'll send you a red line of it, and we'll start to see if we can work what we think is,
To
what
refine
makes
one.
sense. Yeah,
Mhm.
what we can come up with.
Okay.
I'll take a look at what it is the state's doing, and the only reason I ask that is because it may be, if we know what the state, kind of the direction they're going, maybe there's things in the state law that we want to include so we get ahead of them a little bit, then it's easier for us to do it. And then we'll identify kind of the policy issues, right? The policy
Mhm.
issues are gonna be, when do you want it to go into effect? We're gonna have to talk to whoever, we're gonna have to decide, or the mayor's gonna have to decide initially, you know, who in the city is going to be the enforcing agent of this. Because that's the other thing you'll learn about municipalities, is that who enforces it in Atlantic Highlands and Monmouth Beach may be different than the person here. And then we can, you know, identify those issues, council will make those calls, those are,
Yeah.
you know, kind of council calls, and then we'll go from there. I think that's the way we do it, and we try to get something that makes
Good,
sense.
good.
Because we're not reinventing the wheel here. I mean,
Right.
there's a very small universe of the changes between the 24 ordinances that I've seen have been very small.
Was there any pushback in Atlantic Highlands?
No.
Or did it just went through easily? Red Bank did recently.
Yeah, I don't think,
Yesterday.
I'll check and see,
Okay.
Carol Berlin from my office is the borough attorney there, so I'll check and see whether or not they've had, I had to check and see when it was that it went into effect, because, you know, you'd like to see a summer season to find out. Yeah, it went into effect at the beginning of this year, so they probably had a whole season of it.
Now, was that full-on single-use plastic, or was it only straws in it?
No, it was
Okay.
full-on
Okay.
single use. Like I said, if you send me contact, I'll send you
Sure.
copies of some that we have, so that you could see what we did. But yeah, like I said, it's very similar to your ordinance,
I'm
except
sure.
it has a list of, the exceptions are delineated a little bit more, not anything out of the ordinary, but, I don't think, so.
So, just my,
How does this affect the ShopRite, Fine Fair?
It affects it in a big way. I mean, but the trickle-down effect is that the overwhelming positive end result is a lot less plastic into our ocean. So, you know, you're not gonna have people in line, and it's a constant, like manufacturing line spitting out plastic bags into the environment. So there will be no more plastic bags. It's, you come in and you have to use reusable. You have to
Or
get reusable.
paper bags.
Or paper.
And we don't
Yeah,
have-
the biggest impact is on food stores, right? Especially larger food stores, right? And then when you get to plastic forks and knives and those things, but you get to really takeout restaurants. So those are the two big changes, you know, changing from plastic straws to paper straws. I mean, a lot of people are just doing it, getting rid of styrofoam containers, that's something
That's
that
the
the
next
industry,
level.
and the industry has really kind of moved into that. It's not uncommon now, even on takeout food, to get it in
When you go into
there.
Wegmans, I was there today or yesterday, everything is cardboard. Even the forks and the spoons and all that they have there are either like wood or something.
They're pretty clean.
So,
Yeah.
if you go, there's nothing, they're very conscious about the environment. And when we're teaching our kids to be conscious, then we shouldn't be contradicting what we're teaching our students.
So, being on the other side, Fine Fair can't compete with Wegmans.
So,
I'm just, you know, there is always a little guy you have to think about, that's all, I'm not against, you know, plastic, but I do wanna just consider, you know, the little.
Just something to address your question about the supermarket. So Fine Fair, there've been studies that show if you impose a fee on like the bags, so if you do keep the bags available for, let's say, a certain amount of time while we have a transition period, 5-cent fee on bags, that people change their habits pretty quickly, and they go from like a 50% or 80% taking plastic bags to, 50% bringing their own, and then a good majority just not even taking a bag. So you can have some sort of like transition where the consumer adjusts while the stores are adjusting, and then it's pretty seamless, and the data show that the ordinances that have these fees associated with them are, have higher success rates. in
I know
terms of-
that's the approach, I know Austin, Texas has had that for a number of years, that you have to pay
Yeah,
for a
there's
plastic
a
bag.
lot of, I think there was just an article out a couple weeks ago, there was like 400 municipalities that were studied, and the ones that have these fees are, the litter, the public works departments don't pick up plastic bags off the streets as often. Like, it just kind of has a broader effect, because the consumer changes their behavior, and it's easy for the consumer to change their behavior when they're presented with a fee,
Wasn't that in one of the state proposals too, that fee? And then who imposes the fee and who gets it, or that's all negotiated?
I'm pretty certain that it doesn't really do what it intended to do, and that is that the supermarkets now pay for the bags. If it was 5 cents fee, the bag, a couple of cents would go to the state for plastic remediation, and then the other penny or 3 pennies would go to the supermarket. So they're getting paid now, whereas in the past, they paid for them themselves. So there was no incentive to cut down on the amount of plastic bags that they're giving out, because they're actually getting some money back from it. Whereas at this moment now, they don't get any money back.
I think part of the theory was to cover whatever the cost was, cost it.
And
But you're right, it did change behavior, it just changed behavior by its very nature.
And ShopRite used to give 5 cents if you brought your own bags. And they stopped doing that. Stop and Shop did it for a while too, and then they stopped doing it.
So,
Those are the other approaches.
the one other suggestion I would make is, it was brought up, the idea of kids. We remember the group of the kids that came to the council workshop. If somehow we could include one student, as to just a learning kind of thing, and they can report back, and, we're listening, we're responding, all that kind of stuff, I think it would be great.
One of the members of our environmental commission is a Board of Education employee. So we, as the commission, work very closely, and they obviously have a lot of the same goals that we do, so.
But I'm not talking about adults, I'm talking about students.
We
Like the fifth grade.
Right,
Yeah,
we
that would be
incorporate
great,
a lot
so-
with some of their
Yeah.
activities too, so.
Good.
Thank you so much for all that you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do have something that was brought to my attention, it's slightly different, but it's about business. Last time I was here, the balloon release ban that we passed. Somebody from the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions was visiting Long Branch a few weeks ago, and she emailed me. So she saw a family releasing a sky lantern up into the air. So this typically has a candle, and that's what is like the fuel of getting it up there. So the winds, I guess, were blowing westerly, so it was going more towards the dunes. And she approached the family and said, "What are you doing? You could set our dunes on fire." And she was like, "You shouldn't be doing that." And they were like, "No, we can't release balloons, but this is not part of the ordinance." So I don't know if we need to amend and maybe add that, because now it's like a fire hazard, because we've cut back on the balloons. People have found another way to release something else into the air. But it was brought to
Are
my
they
attention.
plastic? Are they paper? What are they?
I think they're paper.
I think they're
Usually they're paper
paper,
bags.
and then they have a candle
They have a candle.
in them.
Yeah.
So depending on where the wind blows and where they land, and we may need to add sky lanterns into that ordinance. I thought I'd bring that to your attention.
How do they get up into the air?
It heats up the air inside the bag, bag's upside down.
It's like a
It's like a balloon.
It's like
a hot air
Like a hot air balloon.
Makes it rise.
They
And
go
it
up
just
pretty
rides.
high too.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that's a danger, because if it wasn't some dry, you're right, the candle's burning.
So I was congratulated that they knew about the balloon release ban. But how the human mind, so just like almost, actually it's a perfect example, if we do enforce this and do the fee, people are gonna think of how else can I use this, the human mind will figure it out. So, just something to bring to your attention, we may need to add that into, sky lantern.
Before you leave and while you're here, I just wanted to thank the Environmental Commission, A, for the filtered water installation, and for, I guess it was Community Development and Stan's group for putting it in.
Yes.
And I also want to thank Rich and his group, Surfers Environmental Alliance, because we're passing a resolution today that his group is funding, and it's not cheap, to chill that water system, which, so thank you. Rich.
We're very happy to work with the city. I think, well, I don't know that all of you know, but I know you do. And again, we're just thrilled to be able to do this. And I see you guys at different events that we help sponsor, and, you know, the city has been a great partner.
And Rich had asked if there's a difference between the cold and not cold water. And I said, well, if you're purchasing it, there's a big difference.
You're right. It took about 30 seconds to get the okay.
But the reality is there really is, if you think about it, right? If you think of, you know.
Right.
And again, we continue to want to work with the city into the future, and as long as I'm executive director, we'll have a good presence in the city.
And also the beach access signs.
Yes,
too.
they're
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're making a nice list together, and again, we're gonna do some planting of cone flowers and some other things. We got an ANJAC grant for that. That'll be done along the boardwalk, and we're working on a lot of different things. And if you all have anything that seems to be outside of the budget of the city, and it has anything to do with the oceanfront, you know, I answer anybody's calls, and we'd be happy to help if we can.
Road paving.
Thank you.
I'm sorry?
Road paving.
Oh, yeah. We wanna pave
If you could help with that, it would really be great.
No problem. I've got the check in my pocket.
Potholes.
The only other thing before you leave, and I don't want to overstep my boundaries, is that, I mean, we do have one property owner that owns a lot of places, obviously, that are right on the beach at Pier Village. Have you, I mean, they could kind of, with a stroke of the pen, get Pier Village to do all of the, you know, their people to do that. Have you had any luck trying to meet with them, or have you tried to meet with them?
Well, actually, the children, when they did their no straw policy, went around to a lot, mainly in Pier Village, and there were all, you know, but the individual restaurant owners. So there was 2 restaurants that agreed to not automatically hand out plastic straws, and I think one of them is no longer there.
I'm just saying that maybe, you know, maybe we can put them in.
Management.
Yeah, with management
Yeah.
of, you know,
This
because
was
there's
more
a,
of
there's a lot of
business.
turnover, and like I said, it'd be pretty easy for them to make as part of their lease that if you have takeout, that you can do X, Y, or Z.
Right.
And that would be a huge, I mean, they're right there, right? If they take out a plastic bag at Stewart's and walking right across the street to the beach, it's not
Right.
going anywhere other than that.
Right, exactly. And part of the Environmental Commission budget, what we try to do is, we buy reusable grocery bags, we buy water bottles, and, you know, at all of our events, we
Sure.
try to at least give freebies for people to at least get a starter kit going.
The introduction would be appreciated, so.
Yeah, I mean,
No, it really would be appreciated. So if you guys can do that, that'd be wonderful.
Just so everyone knows, the lanterns, I was contacted by someone watching here tonight. It never stops. The lanterns violate the Uniform Fire Code for the state of
I
New
thought
Jersey.
so.
So they're prohibited.
So they're banned already.
They're
Yes.
already, okay.
Yeah, they violate the
You
fire
can make a
code for the
citizen's
state.
arrest next week.
Yes.
We better get a fire marshal there to do it.
It's more responsibility.
I kind of figured that,
Yeah.
but I figured I'd bring it to your attention anyway.
People are watching.
Nice.
That's a good
sign.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
Good, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Send me your contact information, and I'll get you like kind of on a group list, and I'll take
Item number 3, capital budget. Mr. Martin. Thank you.
Every year we do a capital program, which we buy larger items that don't go into the operating budget, and we bond money to pay for them. These are the recommendations and suggestions from the different departments. I hope you all received an email with most of the backup for all these items. I don't know, you wanna go over them one by one, or do you wanna ask questions, or how would you like to approach it?
Probably go one by one.
Go one by one, okay, for the police department, the court security is, they needed a metal detector, apparently the current one is failing, and, the AOC has recommended that we replace it. The chief is recommending body worn cameras for the officers. I also think we're applying for a grant for that also to help offset some of the costs. And 2 traffic lights, we adopted a program to just upgrade the old traffic lights in town. We've been doing 2 a year for the last couple of years, and it's just a continuation of that program for traffic signals, intersections and walkways and stuff like that. A lot of the stuff that we have is out of date and can't get parts for it.
On
So
traffic lights?
Traffic lights and the buttons and the signs and intersection, all the lights in the intersection.
Do you know where these 2 are located?
I talked to Lieutenant Shirley a short while ago, and he has a whole list of intersections, but he said actually the 2 that he had in mind, it changed because we just had an accident, and we have to replace some equipment. So, and what he's trying to do, as Mike said, is get a basic maintenance program every year, do 2 of them. He said primarily all of our traffic lights are about 30 years old, so not to do them all in one fell swoop, but to start doing them as we go along. So I think that's a moving target right now as to exactly which ones they would be. They'll have to do an assessment on the condition and see which are in the most need of replacement.
On the body cams, I have a question about that. How many, do we have now? And how old are
Do we
they?
have any?
We do have some, I know there are some, I know some of the specialists, we have Captain Rizzuto's here. The quote that is in the package is for 65 new units, but how widespread is the usage now, Captain?
We've been rolling them in incrementally. Right now, the Class 2 specials wear them, and then specialized uses them as needed. We were waiting until the state issued a memorandum on how they're supposed to be used, and then they kind of backed off on it. We're for it. We think it's a great idea. So we would like to see them issued to all the officers. So we're phasing them in as quickly as we can afford them. So we're testing them, and the technology's always changing, so we didn't want to go ahead and buy a lot of them that would be obsolete next year. So we're testing the ones we have to see if the next generation is going to be something we want to go for. So essentially boiled down, we want them for the whole department. And we're rolling them in slowly, watching the legislation and the mandates coming down from the AG's office and the state as to their use. We have our policy, which mirrors the Monmouth County uniform policy and the state's policy, with a few minor exceptions. But I think I can speak for the chief that we would like to see them rolled in. Very helpful.
So,
Okay, well, hold on,
what's,
hold on.
oh, I'm sorry.
How many do we have now?
That I couldn't answer. I don't know how many we have in the banks right now. That would be a support services question. I can find out though. I can find out by the general meeting tonight how many we have.
And why the special 2s instead of the officers, the regular officers?
Because we've been rolling them out slowly, and right now the Class 2s don't have, some of them don't have the computers in the cars, or they don't have the dash mounted. So essentially, if you don't have a dash mounted camera, you're gonna be wearing a body worn. So some officers do, but most officers have the dash mounted cameras and the audio recorder. Some of the specials don't have that available to them, so they augment it with the body worn. UEZ currently doesn't have the computers in their car, so they wear the body worn. So if you don't have some sort of a recording system, we push you towards the wearing of the body worn.
And what's the status with the grants, and how much might they be, what might the grant be able to cover?
That's a support service question. I can have the answer by the main meeting.
I got another update from outside the room.
All right.
We have 30 now, and this would give us 95, so everybody.
Who do you have in there?
Some of us know. It would be, the whole department would be covered, there's 30 in existence now.
Okay.
And the 65 would get you everybody. That'd be all your sworn, and then I imagine that, I don't think you'd be wearing a body cam, the chief or some of the administrative officers, but this would cover the whole department.
Was this 102,000, is this a part of the budget that we already approved? Or this is
No.
something totally different?
This is for the new capital
New capital.
improvement bond.
How will that affect the tax rate? How will the total number affects the tax rate, not just that 100,000?
It'll become part of our debt service, depending on how long we go out for financing and the rate we get. It'll become part of our debt service number that we finance every year.
Mike, is the 5% in the budget?
5% down payments in the budget.
So the 190,795, so you've appropriated in the budget that money?
Okay.
So, but when you borrow that, the whatever the number is, 3.6 million, then in next year's budget, you would have to then budget whatever the debt services.
Correct.
Mike, it might be helpful, like for the last 2 years, what was appropriated in capital for 18 and 17, just as a reference to this? It's about the same or varied somewhat?
It was a little less, went between 2.5 and 3 million, I think, last 2 years.
And the year before?
That's an average, like 2.8, off the top of my head. I don't know.
Are we aggressively going after these grants?
Always.
It's a good answer. It's a good answer.
Have we gotten a good number of them?
But the reason I'm asking is if there's a grant out there, fine. But if I already have the 102,000, I'm just using that for an example, or the 220, the 250 for the 2 traffic lights, we are appropriated for it, then I really don't have to worry about writing the grant for it.
Well, we're not looking for a grant for the traffic lights.
I just used it for an example. I don't want to. I'm not just
Only the
talking
cameras.
about the.
I think the grant for the camera's already been submitted, so we're just waiting to hear back whether we got it or not. So the work's done on it.
So, just my view, it's hard for me to say get this and don't get that, because I don't have any context and, all of the reasoning behind it. But if we were to say something like, there will be no increase in the bottom line, and for then whoever decides what gets purchased this year, what's however we do that so that we don't increase the bottom line. To me, it makes more sense to have us say, buy one 36 foot mower but don't buy the other one. I can't advise you on that, but I can say that this administration feels very strongly about controlling costs. So if we can keep the capital budget at the same level it was last year, then there's some rationale for it.
Anita, if I could say, and I don't disagree with you, but I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, you're here basically to just get sort of the pulse of the council on these items, right? This is not
Correct.
fixed at this
Opening
point.
discussion, yes.
Yeah. And again, I think that's a good idea, but on the other hand, for example, if all of a sudden you needed a new garbage truck,
Mhm.
let's say, for
Mhm.
example, you may still have to get it.
Right.
But I think we all understand.
Yeah,
I think.
but I mean, if we had as a guideline,
Yeah.
on something like this where it's, we have some room for discretion here, then to the greatest extent possible, let's hold to what
And that's why I
is
mentioned
important
I
to
wanted you
us.
to be aware of what was spent for the last
Yeah,
couple of
yep,
years
yep.
by comparison.
Mike, from this year to the last couple of years, what's bringing it up about 600,000 or 700,000? Anything different? 'Cause we didn't-
Tackanassi dredging is new.
We didn't have a
trucks
fire
new.
truck last, we didn't have a
Mhm.
fire truck.
Mhm.
It's about 850 right there. We usually do park stuff, we usually do drainage stuff, we always do roads, and there's always little equipment and comparatively, this is not big as far as, you know, the $400,000 or $500,000 for equipment and traffic lights and things like that, it's kinda average.
Yeah.
DPW is probably light, right? I don't see any big ticket items.
They're in and out, they have years, non-years.
Yeah.
So, Mike said that, like, the discussion just started, so what typically happens now? Like, if, let's just say, as an example, if we were to say, our guideline is bottom line needs to stay the same as last year, then you go back and kind of do those negotiations and come back here and say.
George and I would,
okay.
you know, make some decisions as to, you know, what a prioritized list,
Okay.
I suppose.
Okay.
If you're only concerned about the bottom line, if you're not concerned about what projects are in, I mean, you gotta do roads.
Well, you're more,
Gotta do
you and
drainage.
George are more informed to be able to make those decisions. I think for us to say, you know, there was a very clear guideline that was important to us as an administration. So working within that guideline, the two of you working with the department heads and everything, you're more informed to make those
They
decisions.
are more informed, but I am concerned, with some of these items, so, yeah, we need to talk about a couple of these items, so.
What about
But
the
you did say that this is not, if the consensus or whatever is to move forward, you're still gonna come back before we actually go out to bid, so is that correct?
Oh, yeah, you have to introduce a bond ordinance, 2 readings, there's a lot of time, and then they don't have, this will be months away before they start buying stuff.
Mike, is this also because of the difference in the useful life here, or some of these, it's probably more than one bond ordinance, right? I mean,
No, it's commingled into one
You're
ordinance.
coming them all?
Yes.
All in one,
Agreed.
so, but,
Gets average, right?
Yes, an average.
when you do bonding, so when you bond for a dump truck, the useful life of that dump truck is probably 7 years. That means that the bonds that buy that dump truck have to get paid off in 7 years. When you do road improvements, it might be 40 years. So it's not when you're figuring out what the debt service is going to be, you can do it all in one blended ordinance, right, Mike? And then they don't average out the useful life. How do they do it?
They average it.
They average out the useful life, so you'll be able to figure out. So it a little bit depends on what the cost is, a little bit depends on what the mix is also.
So you're saying like if we bought some pickups,
If you did all equipment, you would be paid back much quicker than if you did equipment and then you did road improvements and other things which kind of stretch out the repayment.
right, and you said it's commingled, so does that mean that the pickup trucks are gonna be commingled with the road programs, which could take 40 years as
Mhm.
opposed to
Mhm.
3 years, 5 years? So what happens with the old bonds that we have? Are they renegotiated and lower
No.
interest rates?
No.
Nothing, you can't do anything about that?
We can refund, there are, par calls that are refundable,
Mhm.
and after a certain amount of time of financing, you can refund the bond, but it's state regulated, and you have to say there has to be a 3% savings to the town, and the rate's not moving around too much. We've kind of refunded everything we have previously, since rates have been down for a significant amount of time. Municipal money's cheap these days, so that's why.
So what does that mean? That we don't do that and?
Well, the answer is that there was, Mike, I don't know how many years ago, before the rates on these bonds dropped pretty precipitously.
Mhm.
There was a time when they were dropping where you would be able to go in and, you had borrowed money at 6 or 7%, and now it was at 3.5%.
Right.
And there are a couple of different ways to do that. One is that you might have bonds that are callable, and you can call them and pay them off. That's unusual. But typically what you were doing is going out and borrowing money, creating a bond fund to pay those off, and then, but in order for you to get approval to do that, you had to have a significant enough savings. The problem is that interest rates have been generally flat for a long time. So whatever, those would have been done a long time ago, so now you're really dealing with bonds that are all either have already been recalled and refinanced. It's not like interest rates are, well, in your own world, it's not like interest rates have dropped in the last year that you could go and refinance your house. They've been 3% for 8 years, so everybody who's gonna refinanced a long time ago.
And what
I think that's
about
what
the
it is.
terms of these bonds? Are they,
the length.
Yeah, like, I mean, do we
The
really have to?
length is established by
Set.
the useful life of the fixture.
Yeah, set by statute.
Right, so, I mean, does it make sense to commingle these bonds or to do them separately? I
Well,
mean,
it creates consistency, right? More than likely, if you stand by that, the length of the bonds will be consistent. They should age out at about the same time.
Right, it helps in planning and, also saves on costs.
If not, if you had $1 million worth of vehicles, you'd be forced to pay those off possibly in 3 years if you did those just by themselves, as opposed to bringing in the lifespan of the roads, which may be 35 years. Now you're able to take that debt and spread it out over a longer period. And we do keep our vehicles more than 3 years, but when it comes to financing, cars are only 3-year life. I believe 4x4s are 5.
Anything bondable's gotta be 5 years.
5 years? Okay.
Yeah,
Maybe
you don't
5
see,
years more.
the reason you don't see police cars on here is because of that problem that you have, that the state won't let you bond them,
But you can do trucks.
but you can do trucks.
You can do, that's why a lot of the police departments do the SUVs, because they're considered trucks.
And,
we're paying interest on vehicles though for a very long time, that's my point. To me, that's a lot of money.
well, it's relatively cheap, but the other theory about it is this, is that if you buy a dump truck and you're gonna use it for 15 years, if you were to pay it off in 5 years, that means the taxpayers today are gonna pay off in 5 years, something that taxpayers over the next 15 years are going to use. It's the same reason with road improvements. The reason you don't pay all of your road improvements out of cash is because taxpayers over the next 50 years are gonna use those roads, but you burden the taxpayers this year with paying for them.
Actually,
So-
with your police cars, you're doing lease purchases anyway.
Correct.
Through the Cranford Co-op, so those are 3-year deals. You pay off 1/3 per year and then you own it outright. It's a lease purchase. You'll see the DPW vehicles, these trucks will go 15, 20 years. If you ride through DPW, you got some
They have some
trucks.
old trucks.
Yeah,
Sure.
there's some old ones, but they get a lot of life out of it. They go,
Yeah.
some of them might only be used 2 or 3 hours a day. So if they're gonna last a long time and be financed for a much longer period of time as compared to a regular sedan. So, it all works out, in short.
Any other questions for Mr. Martin?
So what's the next step?
Were you gonna go through the rest of these?
I could.
Why don't we?
DPW, the gas pumps at our DPW facility are failing and in need of replacement. And, just the pumps itself, not the tanks, which is a whole nother different can of worms. We're gonna try and just do the pumps and a canopy at this stage, and we estimate that to be around $100,000. Stan's got a list of vehicles and tractors and mowers and things that he wants to get. Total cost estimated around $235,000. This isn't on your list, this was actually presented to me today. The City Hall roof is leaking. I don't know if George, you know more about this? City
Yeah,
Hall engineering.
In some of my earlier discussions with Stan, we talked about the condition of the building. If you're here during rainstorms, and you don't have to look far to see all the infiltration of the water. And we thought it was a good idea, before we start tackling the walls of the building, to get the top of it secure. And that's a regular occurrence. We have garbage cans throughout the building catching water that comes in. So we have an architect on staff that gave us a proposal to do the study, evaluate it, create documents, and go out to bid and do construction oversight. So we wanted to take that first step and get working on stopping the damage that we're getting from the roof here. We don't have a price on the roof, so that would have to come later, that bonding, if we come up with a dollar figure to do it. But we wanted to take the first step and at least see what we're actually dealing with and have an evaluation of the roof done.
And what's that amount to us then?
It's
$46,500 for the evaluation, design, engineering.
Where is that? Is that on a
Sure.
different sheet
No, he
here?
said it's
No,
not
that
on.
was a
Oh, it's
late
not on
entry, I
the sheet.
apologize for that.
Yeah, so, George, is what you're saying, because this building really should look better, wait a minute,
Go ahead.
So is what you're, is there a master plan of, we're doing this, this is the sequence, and we're gonna do this so that in 2 years, this building is gonna look like it should look?
Well, I don't think it'll happen in 2 years.
Well,
It's gonna be an
you know I'm
expensive
making that up.
proposition.
I'm-
But, yeah, I went through this in my prior job. We spent 10 years planning renovations for our building. They're still working on it there now, because they couldn't come to an agreement on what format it should take place. But here, I don't think it's about rearranging or adding on to the building. It's about getting it into a decent shape. The problems where I came from were logistical as far as square footage and how the building is configured. But in my short time here, I've witnessed water pouring in.
Right, we all have.
I've
We all
witnessed
have.
water
So
in the Detective Bureau.
If I may get a perfect example would be the HVAC system, okay? So
Yeah.
we knew that was gonna be about Mike, jump in if I'm wrong, we knew that was gonna be about $1 million project.
Mhm.
Kathy could attest, as I could,
Mhm.
you'd walk into the council chamber and it'd be
Right.
freezing or it'd be hot or
Yeah.
whatever. So at some point, you have to pull the trigger. So am I right? And I think in this case, when there are garbage cans around and leaking, and you saw in the council chambers Stan and his crews, and they're fixing
Yeah,
from the
yeah.
leak. So these things are like, look in the hallway, they're popping up, so we kind of fix them.
Would you, I understand all that, and that we all have seen it and experienced it, and know that the building needs kind of an overall master plan of how do we make City Hall look like a City Hall that we can be proud of, And so the idea of, that the HVAC thing, that's an immediate thing, we need to take care of that. What's next? What's next? What's next? So we know in the capital plan to expect that, next year we're gonna see this because we planned for it. That's what I'm saying. Do we have such a plan?
Well, we haven't gone that far, and I talked to Stan, I talked about the overall condition of the building. I've talked to our department heads, it's bad here.
I know.
It affects morale.
Totally.
I
The
think
police
it's.
department's
Yeah.
horrible down there.
Yeah,
I
listen,
mean, you walk through there, it's like a dungeon.
When we evaluate all this, every year we put a couple millions, $1 million to it, maybe we should go a couple of years and build a new one, because this building is in very bad shape, and it was built now. We all know, it was built on top of water, and we're gonna have problems forever.
Yes.
How much money you invest into this building? So it's something to consider.
And that's a big discussion
Yes.
for the entire governing body
Right.
with the consultation of a professional and architectural firm to come in and do, and that, I don't see us biting that off. I wanna take care of the immediate recognizable problem is, we've got water coming in from
Yeah,
the top.
but George, I think what I'm saying, and I think what we're saying is, we understand there's a certain amount of, look, get the bucket because the water's coming in. But how do we move away from that too, so that we do have those big, tough discussions, expensive discussions that we plan out, so the capital budget isn't a surprise.
Right.
That we need to schedule those things in and.
What I would suggest is, I think we need to do this one, this is
I
an
understand,
immediate
right,
issue.
Right.
For the big picture and for the grand scheme of things, if council approves of it, we bring in an architectural firm, we have one appointed. They do very, very big projects. They have lots of, I dealt with them previously. They have tremendous government and building experience, and it's a different animal. They're dealing with different types of vendors, you're dealing with different bidding laws, and so on. We bring them in, and we tell them what it is we want to accomplish, and then let them come up with the scheme. And I've been through both ways, where they've absolutely pushed, get out of the building you're in. Build a separate building to house just one of your departments, and then repurpose the existing building. But they also need to take a really in-depth look at this building. I remember this, I read the articles, this place was 5 years old, and it was front page news in the Asbury Park Press, that it was a sponge.
Yeah.
That it was built in improperly, that the wrong type of brick
Right.
was used,
Yeah.
all of those things.
Yeah.
That was back in the 70s.
That's what I was trying to tell you,
Yeah.
if we're putting $1 million every year,
Right.
and we always have an old building,
Yeah.
you're always gonna have problems.
Yes.
You always have problems with mold. I mean, maybe we better go a different route.
Yes, and it's, I would bring in a professional to evaluate the building, and give you your A, B, and C choices.
So-
And with a general price tag attached there too.
Right.
Okay, you really wanna bite off $35 or $40 million for a
Yeah.
new building.
Yeah.
I think that's conservative, given the square footage we could use.
So how do we have that conversation, John? Is it,
Well, we can have it, and again, I'm not disagreeing with you,
Yeah.
I just have to also put out there that, again, we are always balancing, right?
Right.
So you started off the conversation by saying, you know what, I wanna keep to where we were this year and the year before. So, you know, again, I'm not speaking for myself, this was presented to council, that we always knew that we were gonna need a new HVAC system, which I think ultimately cost, what, Mike? 1.5 million after it was all said and done. So, I mean, we knew that, I mean, anybody who was living here, you know, working here knew that. So at some point, again, I guess the decision, again, I don't know, I was on, you know, I was over there. At some point, the decision was made, well, look, we just have to bite the bullet and do it, you know? So, again, I think, like I said, it's always, you know, it's always a balance.
It's
I think
always the-
George is right, that if there's an immediate issue here,
Yeah.
that leaking wasn't, I don't remember that leaking
Yeah.
as being as severe in the
I think-
past, so we have to address it.
I think what I'm saying, I'm gonna say what we're saying is, we understand there's a balance. It seems like most of our thinking is in the immediate knee jerk, because guess what, the water's coming through. So like how, for us to start to move to the more strategic, longer term planning, that's all that I'm saying,
So I mean, I don't know how that is done. If you had done a study,
Right.
would they be able to tell you all the deficiencies in the building?
I've been through this. They came in, they
Yeah.
told us the deficiencies of the building. A lot of it had to do with space allocation, but there were also structural issues. Then you get into the security issues. This building has the same problem that I experienced before. The clerk's window is open. You can lock the door all you want, someone can vault the counter and be in there. Do you wanna make it a secure facility as well? If you go into Neptune Township's municipal building, everything is plexiglass, you're in one main lobby and you're surrounded by service windows. So all those things come into play and you prioritize. But you have and you would have a roundtable discussion with your professional, tell them what it is we feel is deficient. And again, you look at around the windows here, I've been in the offices, the tax assessor's got duct tape around all his window frames. There's water damage beneath all the windows here. Obviously, that's a big issue, the infiltration of the water. And I don't know if it's as simple as just the windows. I think it's coming in other places because of the design. But you sit with the professionals, they evaluate the building, and they're gonna give you, here's what you can do to remediate this building, and here's an approximate price tag. If you wanna move to another building, then they're gonna give you that price tag. And then we're gonna look at, do we take the offices that are in the annex in the back and incorporate them into a new structure? And those are big, big decisions that you don't make overnight, and they'll have to really look at all the options. I went through it, we wanted to remodel in my former employer, and the architect said, you're wasting your money, you're wasting your time, build another police department in another location, build a new public works. So you have to go through all those options.
Right, but Anita, then, if I understand, are you suggesting perhaps a study be done so that, again, it's not a knee-jerk reaction and we know in advance what the system?
If that's the way we get out of the immediate knee-jerk kind of
What
thing,
would,
then
do you have any idea what the cost of the study, like something like that would be, or would you have any?
that we look into it, you know, that we.
Dave, would you have any ballpark?
Or Laura, do you have you
Well,
gone through
probably
this?
depends on how detailed you get.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing for them to come in and tell you what they feel is a deficiency, cause that's the other thing. What we think is a deficiency and what they think, is gonna be different.
Right.
And that's gonna be the key.
But I mean, there must
And
be
then you
some
have to
sort
look
of
at,
overall structural.
you're gonna be looking at what the price would be if you're gonna do it,
Yeah.
say in the next 3 to 4 years, then, they're gonna tell you that, well, how quickly do you plan on doing that, cause that has something to do with it.
Yeah, but I don't think it's a question of what the project would cost, the question is what would it cost to get it?
To get the
The
study.
study.
Study would be probably $20,000-$25,000.
So maybe it's worth going out and and, well,
Give or
according to
take.
you have an
Depending on
architect
what
already,
we-
so maybe you
yeah.
get a proposal from your architect as to what that study will cost, and then maybe that's the first step.
Laura, is this something that you do?
Well, if you have an architect already on board, we can team with them, but primarily because this is internal to the structure, I would recommend you go with an architect. They're gonna provide those recommendations. We'll mainly look at feasibility, we do needs assessments, we do all those type of things. But if you're looking at physically what upgrades need to be done within this building, I think your best bet is to go with the architect that you have on board.
Well, maybe we should, I mean, I walked outside one day, it was raining, and I saw this hose coming outside from the police
Oh, it's all
department.
the time.
It's all the
Anytime
time.
there's a severe rain, it's all the time.
They have two pumps down in the entryway there.
Having an inch or two of water down there apparently is not an unusual occurrence. It's like a regular occurrence when it rains.
To have flooding.
And I mean, it's not,
It's
that's not a good environment to work in, not healthy either.
No, no, it's not
I'm sure
healthy.
there's Mold and everything else down there.
All right.
All right.
That's another issue, that's what we gotta look at.
I'm sure there's, no, just,
Anything else, Mr. Martin?
We can move on, we can move down the list. The fire department is requesting, in previous years, the fire department's come in and said, we need a fire truck, or we need 2 fire trucks. And they're $1 million at a clip. So I said to them, I go, look, you guys know when you're gonna have to replace your equipment or upgrade your equipment in advance. You gotta let us know so we can start, in a sense, budgeting for it, so we can borrow a little bit each year, so we don't get hit with $1 million or $1.5 million truck in 1 year, and it wipes out our capital program if we wanna stay within a guideline. So, they expect they're gonna need a truck in a year or two, and they requested around $400,000 to be put aside for a future vehicle. So that's the fire truck. Down to engineering or drainage program that we have been continuing for the past several years. But Jerry Frieda has indicated, we're prioritizing down a list, and these are the 2 or 3.
Yeah, I have the quotes from Avakian, and it's drainage improvement for Garfield Avenue, from 3rd Avenue to 2nd Avenue. And I've been on site with Jerry and with Stan Zubin. I rely on Stan to identify the areas in need here, in concert with our engineering staff. And also Harrison Street from Branchport Avenue to Washington Street.
How about Long Branch Avenue, has anybody driven down there in a rainstorm lately?
I did today, it's pretty amazing. Hmm?
Those,
Did you bring your boat?
those improvements
No,
are
I had an
supposed to be-
SUV, and I went early. But these were the ones that were identified for now. I know the list is endless, from what I'm gathering in my time here is, we've got old infrastructure, and we're trying to knock
Florence
off.
Avenue's terrible too.
What's that?
So, if I may, again, in 2012, for the first time, a comprehensive drainage program, I shouldn't say program, but identifying all the drainage problems in the city. And by the way, Laura, if you don't have that, I don't know who has it, but, and I think they identified about somewhere between 40 and 50 places that could need it. And then it was a question of, okay, some of them were literally $1 million projects, others were relatively small. In the last, 6 or 7 years, they've addressed quite a few that they haven't before. And again, Mike, jump in if I'm right. So I think for the last couple of years, the road improvement drainage has been around $2 million, right?
Combination of, yes.
Yeah, so there's been sort of an attempt to tackle, I should say, that drainage problem as well as doing a road improvement. So I think we're kind of being consistent, with that here. It's a discussion about how those roads are chosen and the projects and so forth, and I think we can still talk about that. But again, this is, like I said, this drainage platform didn't really exist prior to 2012. And I'm assuming that they're still working off that and what we know. They did a study. And, the road improvements, we try to, if I'm not mistaken, do 7 or 8 roads or whatever we can. And where they're needed, spread them around,
So what's the story about Long Branch Avenue? Like, why wasn't that
like I said,
done
I wouldn't know the
initially? I mean, it's
specifics,
bad down there.
that,
You have police.
that drainage and things was being addressed with that development over there. They were gonna do a significant amount of drainage improvement along with that, the Ocean Gate development.
So they're gonna address the issue?
That was included in their original development.
There's a
agreement,
significant contribution of offsite improvements there.
which is drainage and receiving and things like that, so.
Well, you're talking about that new project then?
Ocean Gate.
Ocean Gate.
Yeah, because you know, some of that on Whitmer, there's no drainage at all. It just sits there. There's no drainage at all. That was part of the project, was to create a drainage thing.
So, but Long Branch Avenue is included in that
I
whole
believe it's things, a
project?
portion of.
I don't know for sure, because some of these things are all interconnected. You know what I mean? These drainage issues start at one place and cause the flooding elsewhere. And so
We recently had
I
a
can't answer,
flooding
I don't know
issue
that we can answer that.
that was
exactly.
linked back to a blockage in the gas company property from
Yeah.
2 blocks away.
Right.
Water, the water finds its way, and then it hit an obstruction, so our people, actually, we're waiting for a response from the gas company to allow us to go in to just clear that creek. But because it's the gas company property, we have to get their permission. But we had another problem down at Seaview, at Ocean Ave, and it turns out we've got a blockage in it, well, I can only describe it as a box that's built into the beach that has weed poles in it that are stopped up, that Stan's dealing with. So these things are they all have a life of their own. They're all specific to the area, and there's different types of fixes that have been put in place that we're dealing with here.
What happens on Bath Avenue impacts Morel, Willow, all the way down to Chelsea, Morris, you know what I mean? So there's, and Lincoln Avenue, the same thing, River Trestle.
Yeah, that's bad there too, yeah. Thank you.
So, road program?
Road program.
Yep, we have a number of streets. Laura went out. We had some streets that were priced out by our former engineer, and Laura did a review of all of that. She rode the streets with Stan about a week or so ago. She's been all over the city, and we have a number of streets identified in that quote. In brief, Morris Avenue, 2 sections of Morris Avenue. We have Chelsea Avenue, Hillside Avenue, pardon me for thumbing through here, North and South Lake Drive,
West Hillsdale.
and West Hillsdale. So, got a pretty good selection of roads there, all for basically mill and pave.
That's correct.
Some curb work.
Yes.
Anything else you want to add?
Miscellaneous concrete work
Okay.
and then overall mill and overlay.
Is that road, Laura, is that road and curbing as well, or just?
Only curb and sidewalk replacement where needed.
Where needed.
I have to tell you, a lot of them didn't need a lot of concrete work in my opinion, but I did budget probably at least 25% on each of them. Some of them did require more, but like North-South Lake Drive, it didn't look like it needed that much work. So some of them didn't require as much. I kind of percentaged it.
That's around the lake, right, Taconic
Yes.
Lake?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that like really in need of repairs right now, as opposed to some of the other streets that are on Long Branch? I mean, I've gone down there several times and I don't think it's so horrible. But
There's
there's,
Atlantic Avenue.
yeah, go down Atlantic Ave, well, that's a county road, right? So they have to deal with that? Like, how do we prioritize what roads really need to be done first?
That's usually done by Stan and the engineer.
I mean, I've asked the same question. I think it's usually Stan. What we hear from people, constant complaints about a particular road and so forth, and then I think how we can sort of use the money most efficiently to either combine some things or go to all different neighborhoods. Would that be fair to say, Laura?
Yes.
I just don't, I think there's some streets that are, can we like hold off on that list and reevaluate it a little bit?
Sure.
I just think there's other streets that need more work than some of the ones you just mentioned to us.
I think that, I mean, that's just the price tag, right? I mean, we could shift that around any way you wanted to, if you wanted
You
to.
could shift it,
right?
you could also add alternates, like
Yeah.
if you found one to be needing work more,
The one thing is budgetarily, when you start to look at worse roads, sometimes they're better candidates for grant submissions,
Right.
like local aid or municipal aid grants, just because you're at least gonna get money towards the improvements. The other thing to consider is whether or not infrastructure, drainage upgrades, stuff like that is needed, because they tend to add substantially to the price cost.
I'm gonna take my bike and go around out here.
Okay, you guys are all familiar with the Jackson Woods project. We applied for a grant. I think we were awarded the grant, and this is our share, $240,000. And Tackanassie Lake dredging is an estimate by ARH to do another phase of strictly the dredging. The dredging is the least expensive part of the job. The spoils.
Right, getting rid of the spoils.
Will be placed out and dried, and then there'll be another expense to dispose of it, which is more expensive than the dredging itself usually. So,
And just so you know, that does not directly correlate to what was, the cleanup there at the front right there. Back in, what was it, 2013 or 14, we did the first section. We dredged where the stone hut is from Norwood to wherever. And then it was always supposed to be a three-stage project, right?
So they started the hut and they're moving.
The Norwood Avenue was done, I think, back in 2013, 14. Then we put all the sediment, we reinforced the banks.
Right, it has to dry for, I believe, 2 years, where it has to sit,
Yes.
the spoils. They were able to identify a city-owned parcel, put the spoils there, let them dry. What's that?
On Hoey, near
Yes.
the
Yeah, there's a
trestle.
lot there, and then use those to reinforce and rebuild the banks. We don't have that luxury this time around, so we would have to actually get rid of the spoils. So that's where the big cost would come through. As far as the dredging, that would be a shared service with Monmouth County. They can do this, they're doing it all over. They did the last one, right?
They did, yes.
Yeah, and, I'm sure at a much reduced rate compared to a private contractor.
I know the water comes from I know beyond Monmouth University. Do you know how far?
Comes through the Whale Pond Creek.
All the way to Ocean Township from what I understand.
Goes all the way to Tinton Falls at least.
Oh, it goes that far?
Yeah, Whale Pond is into Tinton Falls.
Right, it comes from Tinton Falls, goes through the back of Industrial Way, west in Eatontown, works its way through some county property. That's why when Faith Teitelbaum comes around, she's involved in all of those municipalities with the watershed group that she has.
Oh, okay.
So we're the unlucky end of the line
We
for
got
all
the
of
end
it.
of
Yeah,
it.
so it's bringing sediment all with it.
Yeah.
So, it's about $3.8 million altogether. We put 5% down payment, you borrow the rest, that's usually how these are funded. Again, this is a working document strictly for discussion purposes at this point. I will get you a history of the last 5 years of capital ordinances and bond ordinances that we've done, just to give you a gauge of what we've previously spent. And, discuss amongst yourselves, and we can put it on for discussion next meeting if you want to talk more about it. But it will take time to produce an ordinance and adopt an ordinance.
So what's our timeline, like, that we need to get this completed by?
Well, when you guys give me the go-ahead and finalize the projects, next meeting I can introduce the ordinance. Meeting after that, we'll adopt it, and it's 20 days after that, before we start buying anything. So you're looking at a month, 2 months,
Yeah.
2 months after you say go.
And the road program is usually a year behind. We're just starting our 2018 program now. That's the way these normally roll.
Okay.
Because you don't do it during the winter, once the money's secured. By the time you do that, the weather's not conducive.
And, so it just asking, will we go ahead and just start to look at what a study of this building would be, or what are we gonna do with that? Are we gonna do anything with it, or?
It's at to your pleasure, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Get proposals.
Actually, we have more than one architect appointed on our staff. We
Okay.
can get the general concept. We would have to have a meeting, really, to give them all the same information as to what we're looking to do. and then they can draft proposals and give us their price, what
Okay.
it would take to do the evaluation.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm so persnickety. How are we gonna make that happen? Who's taking the lead on this?
George's responsibility.
Business
George?
administrator.
Okay,
I'll get a
good.
proposal on.
Okay, great.
I've dealt with the architect that the city currently has. There's another one that actually I'm gonna have a conversation with, a representative. But I've been through a very similar process with them before.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Mark?
That's all I have, thank you.
Any other questions? Item number 4, board updates.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Planning board, we don't have much right now, we have one, is that the board updates that we're
No,
talking
I
about?
thought we were talking about vacancies, no?
No, now we're talking about
Now
the.
we're talking.
I thought so, but I remember that from last week.
Until MJ comes back.
Yeah, I remember that from last week, I stepped up. The planning board really doesn't have, we have one minor subdivision application for the funds. Warford Avenue, that's about it.
Thank you. Bruce?
I have none.
I actually have a question about the cable commission. Does anybody know, I guess John and George, the status of the RFP?
Our purchasing officer is here.
I haven't heard anything from Kevin. I gave him some, after we met, I gave him some additional, samples to look at, some things that we probably need to add. I haven't heard back from him.
Okay.
And I had to leave right before the end of that meeting, but it's my understanding that decision was made to have the city issue an RFP,
Yeah,
where it
we'll
was
do a
media
formal
services.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's the title that I recommended, so
Yeah.
it will cover anything under that category.
Okay, so we're kind of waiting to hear from Kevin.
Yes, Kevin has all the technical, and I wanna make sure that everybody that was involved, it covers what their concerns are.
Yeah, okay, good.
And
And
that's
Dave, Dave, you'll let me take a look at it too, cause I've done some of these too, so to the extent that we can be helpful.
Great.
Thank you.
So do you need to contact Kevin?
No, I'm not supposed to be appointed.
Oh, you're not supposed to be? Well, somebody can contact Kevin to get it
I
going.
think Dave's been in contact with him, right?
I
Dave,
know,
you
but
been
he
in
was
contact?
supposed to get back to me, hasn't, so maybe we should reach out to him.
I have no issue reaching out to Kevin.
Yeah.
I'll let him know that we had a meeting and we wanna know what the status is.
Thank you.
And then, I'll report back accordingly to Mr. Jackson.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Great.
My question is, for George or, Lou, actually, in regards to, code enforcement, did we go out for RFP? Remember, we had just gotten some documents from one of the companies that we met with.
We have not gone out yet. Dave did the first draft of the procurement documents. My office has reviewed them, given that to George, so we haven't yet, but so we're in the process of drafting them.
Will that be done by next week?
Well, will we
Dave
have
has
it ready
all-
to be issued?
He has all Carol's copies.
Yeah, right.
So he's gonna modify.
We have to issue it first. It won't be on the agenda. We won't put it out on the street and get it back by next week.
No, not
I'm
get it
sure.
back, but it will be out.
Oh, I'm sure it will be, yes.
That's what it is. Okay, thank you. Since nothing else, item 5, review of the, regular meeting agenda. Anyone have any issues? Okay, I need a motion to close.
So moved.
Second.
Opposed? Now I need a motion to adopt a resolution to go into executive session for the following items: contract negotiations, city-owned properties.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Now I'll take a roll call.
Roll
Mr.
call.
Viera?
Yes.
Dr. Vogt? Yes. Mrs. Wittes?
Yes.
Mr. Dangler?
Yes.
Hey, yeah, can we? I don't believe so. Oh, I mean.
You want my card?
Okay. How much did you want?